Friends, today's NRI Samai program from Los Angeles brought to you commercial free by listeners like you. Your generous donations make possible for us to stay commercial free, and today's show is pre-recorded. If you have a question for the guest, please send an email to nrisamai@gmail.com. We will follow up with the guest and find the answer for you. Thank you for your support.
A very warm welcome to all our listeners on NRSMI. Continuing our special focus on voice as part of the 5-part series, today we have Vijaya Moorthy, who is based in Bangalore, to talk about the journey from Uttarakhand to J&K to Northeast and how all the different team members of the now Voice organization came together to form Voice and how they collectively move forward from one disaster to the other. So Vijaya, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Hey Suresh, thanks a lot for asking me in. And hi everyone, that side.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Vijaya, tell me a little bit about yourself first and how you started. Before we get into how Voice was formed, how did you actually meet the members of Voice organization itself?
All right. I basically there was no Voice organization at the time. This was just a couple of days after J&K floods. The disaster happened on the 7th or 8th of that 7th night of September. And I saw this page, JKFloodrelief. Now, personally, I have spent time 10 years ago doing relief as a volunteer, relief work with the tsunami, during the tsunami period in Pondicherry and Cuddalore. So,
I see.
And later on with the Gujarat earthquake. And these were teams of people which connected at that time in the absence of Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, through phone or blogs.
I see.
So today, Twitter being there, it's a big source of connection. I mean, big platform for connection and inspiration. So I got onto this page, which said JKFloodrelief.org, went there and signed up for volunteers page, and that's how I was in it within hours. Somebody called back, and in a couple of hours, I was on board. That's how I joined the JKFloodrelief team. There were about 7 people there.
I see.
And I was the 8th.
I see. So what was your contribution when you joined the team? How did you get involved in the relief efforts?
When I joined up that day, that evening, we were right in the middle of rescue. We were curating tweets, seeing what is happening in terms of rescue rather than relief, and pushing it to the army on Twitter. And that was the biggest thing we were doing that evening. So I was actually put straight onto Twitter to keep following it and giving an hourly update on spreadsheets that were being passed to the army. And that was the first day. And in the next few days, we took on to logistics and transport management for shipments. I mean, if you would recall, there were airlines basically starting with Air India, but that had a glut in terms of carrying relief. So we networked Indigo and SpiceJet in, and basically were managing a lot of public goodwill, the relief that was moving. And there was only one way to take it there, was through flights. So I was handling the shipment and logistics and the tweet with other team members. That was our basic task for the first few weeks after that.
I see. Now, one question here. Given the nature of floods in J&K, and also there was quite a bit of media coverage, at least in the beginning of, unlike the northeastern floods. Given that the only way these large shipments actually made it to J&K was through the airways, wasn't the government actually involved in doing these relief efforts, like at least in the initial stages?
Sure. The government was, and primarily the government was using the national air carrier, the Air India flights. So what was happening is the scenario was thus. There was a lot of airlift going on from the major metros, starting with Delhi, moving on to Mumbai, and Bangalore and the others coming next, Kolkata as well. Now, at the airports here, there was a huge logistical problem. Everything was put out because there was no space in the material shipment areas. Srinagar was worse because all airlines were reaching there, and there was complete chaos. So what happened was the government assisted the army reaching the shipment, but the rest of the shipment, stayed out because the airport authorities couldn't manage it. So whether it was rain or shine, everything was lying outside. And these were of most shipments were of consumable nature, whether sent by government or private agencies. We had to ensure on our part that it wasn't wasted and it really reached people in the relief camps. People were there to pick it up, but there were no handlers at the airport, especially on the Srinagar side, given the amount of material they went. So it was more of material disposal management, basically from airport to the camps. Dispensation, outside, that was more critical. Otherwise, it could be lying outside and getting wasted. So we were dealing with the glut on both ends. And things like, I have an example here, things like we needed insulin to go. Now, that is not something that can wait in queue either at a Delhi airport or at a Srinagar airport. It's packed in ice and sent. So we needed special permissions at time. Even at 1 a.m., we were asking at points in time, requesting air cargo people to take that in priority vis-a-vis clothes or something else that could have gone, because this box needed to reach some camp pretty much, a medical camp pretty much instantly. So these are the things these were the challenges at that time, because there was a lot of goodwill, as you say, from the people. And the government was doing a lot. The media was focusing. So it was somewhere we needed to manage the goodwill and manage the logistics that we were into.
Right. Now, did you get a sense that the government did not really have like a so-called disaster management in place? Because I would think that these kind of logistical problems is something that they would think are bound to happen given the practical nature of this. So I would have expected either the federal government or the state governments to better manage these logistics or stagger these relief efforts, not just, dump everything from one location to the other.
Quite right when you ask this question from a perspective, that the world knows that such kinds of disasters do hit India. India has a large geography. But let me put this in a bit of perspective, for all, our listeners. A couple of things. As far as the state government goes, the state of Jammu Kashmir, to put it simply, that was underwater. The secretariat was underwater. Everything that could think or act was underwater. So we have to keep the state government away and speak of the central government. Now, the government was basically backing up rescue at that point. There were boats on the roads of Srinagar. The only operating mechanism to help people save lives were two. One, the local volunteers who knew the roads, the lanes, the by lanes, the back lanes, and helped rescue a lot of people. They are our unsung heroes, actually. And the second, the only people who reached to help out, other than local volunteers, was the army. So the entire force of the government was, including sending in choppers where required, boats, material, rescue, whatever, bringing back people. There were a lot of people who were coming back in flights, so free of cost. So the government was basically looking more at relief, sending people to pick up their people. That also happened free of cost for a long time. I think then in material management. So there was a gap. Actually, within 3 days of the disaster, relief also became very important. But the rescue actually kept happening for the 2 weeks. And that was somehow the focus of the government, very rightly so, because saving lives was more important than, and we were using the same airways, the same routes. It was, in a sense, in an unheralded disaster. We know Orissa cyclones happen every year. We haven't heard of a J&K flood in 63 years. So I think we weren't ready for it, basically.
I see.
The flash flood that happened.
I see. And how long were you guys actually involved? Now, initially you said that you were focused on the rescue efforts, but then I guess once the water receded and probably even the media focus was slightly lesser than what it initially had. So how long were the relief efforts continued, or I should say, how long were you guys involved with the relief efforts?
For us, the effort went beyond the cameras going, and we worked there a month. How Voice works, or at that time JKFloodrelief.org was working, neither did we raise funds directly, because we are not a fundraising for self-organization. We came in digitally on this world, and our office was the cyberspace, right? So we kind of engaged with Sajid Iqbal Foundation, very well reputed, working efficiently in a crisis situation, and also having houses of volunteers and a particular sort of an office near the airport, which meant a lot to us, that they could pick up relief on their own and take it on their own steam for distribution to camps. And they had already set up camps by them. This is the Sajid Iqbal Foundation, led ably by a young lady called Seher Iqbal. So we were working with them the minute we realized that now the rescue has been handled efficiently by the government. There are no more people stuck on roofs. Basically, the Twitter flow told us, I think people on social media are very active in the state of J&K, which helped us because they connected real time, letting us know what's happening. Once that was sorted out, we went into managing. We picked up camps that Sajid Iqbal had chosen, and these had a lot of people, many families. We started asking them on priority, what are the needs for the day? We started putting up posters on need for the day basis, so that we didn't have excess donations. We didn't have donations of items not required. And we did it very systematically in a process. We used to put this up, your time in the evening, so that in the mornings, so that India time people could see it as they woke up. We had volunteers in the US, and this kept happening for the next 2 to 3 weeks, till we thought the camps were quite well supported in terms of food, in terms of warm clothing, basically the blankets. So all of this, once it was handled, we kind of started winding out. We explained to Sajid Iqbal, and they said this is fine. Now they can work with the help of other organizations which are based out of J&K, and work with the government, and we could phase ourselves out, yet keeping us, helping them in terms of we till recently had our crowdfunding platform open till maybe a couple of weeks ago. So if people wanted to fund Sajid Iqbal through our crowdfunding platform, they were most welcome to do it, and stuff like that. And in case of any specific need, they can still come back to us. So that is how we took a month, or I would ideally say 5 weeks. Then we phased out of that. And we were also compelled to, because on 23rd September, the floods hit Northeast. So we couldn't say that we are working in J&K and we can't look your way. So we were pushed to actually, change directions as well.
I see. So I guess, so you guys were, is it fair to say you were involved for like about 1.5 months with the J&K relief efforts and rescue efforts put together?
Yes, but I would still say it 5 weeks, because that's what comes to my mind very clearly. I mean, the on-ground support for about 5 weeks.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to sort of summarize some key lessons, if you will, from this whole your engagement voice engagement with J&K, what would those lessons be?
Well, there were quite a few, but very, very important ones for any volunteer org to learn from this is that communication is probably the most vital aspect that needs to be established before any work happens. Because running into a crisis or a disaster situation without any information about what is there, what is expected, can add to the disaster, not relieve people. So communication, one, very required. And in J&K, we were well supported. People somehow could manage to find people locally who could tweet out information, who could probably, the networks were very bad, but somehow they reached some few people who sent us updates regularly. And these were all probably Kashmir University kids, other people who could help, who had some sense of organization or, had some position in society. They managed to send information as and when required, continually. The second thing, support of local volunteers and local organizations. A key to understanding, see, why this is important is, there is a lot when a disaster happens. Needs like women's needs, right? They get ignored. There are pregnant ladies. You need to handle that differently in a relief camp, okay? Aged people. There was a child who needed a ventilator support, and one of our teammates worked the whole night calling up people till the army arranged a chopper for pickup in the early hours. I think it was a crowning moment for any volunteer. It was lovely when that infant was picked up and taken to hospital. So these are things. So local coordination, local volunteer groups, communication, extremely important. Without that, no crisis managing agency or disaster relief group can really succeed. There are cultural aspects, clothing. You cannot send people in J&K, or let's say even in the Northeast, some of them, jeans and T-shirt, for example, for the ladies, let's say. So there has to be a cultural aspect that you come up understanding as very critical, that people follow certain things even in dire situations. So a lot of learning out there. And similar,
That's a very important observation. I would have never thought about those cultural aspects during the time of crisis.
Yeah, we experience the same thing in Upper Meghalaya when we come to that, in the hills of Meghalaya, where people wear, a different robe. They don't wear saris there or salwar kameezes, the ladies. Yeah, so need to be careful with that.
Right. So then I think right after J&K, Northeast happened, without, I would say, in immediate succession, right? There was not much of a gap between the two floods. And
not at all.
Northeast was even more, I would say, difficult. One, because of the terrains, and two, also because of the lack of the media coverage. Like, not many people knew that there were floods in Assam, or forget about floods in Meghalaya. So did that, given that your presence was mostly on the social media, the fact that the mainstream media did not cover, did that have any impact on the kind of work that you were trying to do at the Northeast floods?
Let me put it this way. That was, in fact, our primary challenge to us. And we had to find a way to figure out if social media cannot be, on time, real time, giving us updates. We need substituting it with finding some people locally who will update us. So what we figured out, this happened, it took us a couple of days to even realize that we are ready to do things, but there is actually no update on Twitter. We started following Assam news, Assam 24/7, all on the same day. But we were surprised to see they were talking of cultural programs in some other part of the state or something. Probably we started a soccer league in India around that time. Okay, it's just like IPL cricket if Indians watch it there. A soccer league that was being more discussed more than the floods at a particular time. Yes, there were discussions on flood, and there were good people doing that on the press, but the coverage on Twitter was absolutely scarce. What we did, because it's not that the full of Assam was affected, there were particularly three districts in a large way, and a district or two partially. So the communication lines were not down in Guwahati, the capital of the state of Assam. So what we did, find out, our task was to find out volunteer groups, and we did that, teams of people who communicated to us on call and through a WhatsApp group that we created. And we chatted through the day, but formally in the evenings, to do a needs assessment, a funds required assessment, needs in terms of materials, and how many people. We kept doing this every day and pasting it or posting it on Twitter, on Facebook, on our blogs, on the website homepage, and creating day-on-day needs with the help of these local people. So we kept our work going, though inputs did not happen on social media. They came to us directly through conventional, systems of phone calls, etc., and we placed them for people or, generous donors to have a look and support us. So in a few days, we realized where the gap in communication would be, plugged that, and then we were moving quite fine.
I see.
For Assam, okay.
And then who were these donors? Like, with if the media was covering it, then obviously it would generate that kind of a sympathy and or the goodwill. And in this case, the media was not involved. You guys were getting the updates directly from the people on the ground, and in turn, you were relaying all this information. So did you actually get the same kind of response that you got for example, J&K in terms of the donors donating the money or, donating the material?
Yes and no, in a way, and I'll explain what I mean by that. The media at that time, there was a big international event, probably so to say, happening at that time, and that was our PM's trip to the US. Okay, late September. I think the media was all in that, right? And so we lost out a lot on new people. But the good thing was we had connected with very energetic and, I should say, valuable people. And I would like to mention among so many a person whose name is floating in my mind right now, from Surat in Gujarat, one Mr. Pradeep. And he has an organization called Surat Children's Welfare Organization. Now, this organization did everything to send rice and a particular, item in pulses called Rajma in India, which is, which the intake is high in Jammu Kashmir, and blankets. He did everything possible to arrange for an entire relief camp for a week. So this gentleman had relief supplies lying with him that would be unused. He put in every effort to send the material to Guwahati. So the first requirement that was met was locally raised and with the help of this material. So we had people who had helped us prior, and then there was another lady called Ekta in Kolkata, and these people were doing a lot to collect material. So what was happening then is people who had helped us in J&K had collected more that was not being shipped to J&K for the simple reason that airlines had stopped shipping beyond 3 weeks. So this material, to that sector, right? So a lot of that material could happen, was shipped to Guwahati. The problem was that we faced after that was in Meghalaya, which I want to come to next once we finish Assam, and the challenges out there. So, and Assam was hit in a very limited way. It wasn't, as I said, it was a couple of districts. It was 3 districts, And our volunteers on the ground had visited those villages. They were, these were remote teams. Basically, Kamrup and Goalpara districts were hit. And our team reached the villages of Dirima, Dilinga 1, 2, I remember the names, Badaka, Sildubi, Lakhipur, and reached out to all the families. And the follow-up support was taken up by the follow-up for the next few days and weeks by able local agencies like NEDSF, AIDRC, and the local people, because transportation was not a problem. The roads were fine. So reaching these villages, yes, they were remote, but it's not that, traffic was not plying on the roads or there were communication links which were down. So locals took that up quite ably. And our volunteer, a young, dynamic lady called Vaishali, was excellent on the ground, just like Alan was in Meghalaya. So she did a fantastic survey of needs and reached out personally as part of the team to distribute relief. So we didn't face big bother in SM.
I see. And then, so obviously by now you probably know the sort of, pitfalls, or know what, how you have to organize your, troops and coordinate the efforts. But despite that, you just hinted that Meghalaya was definitely a challenge. Like, in what way was Meghalaya challenging?
Okay, Suresh, I've got to tell you here that at times it is difficult to understand. There's a lot of love that flows in from people. The problem is sometimes, I have met people personally who say, okay, where is Meghalaya? Okay, so it is that far in the northeast, touching the borders of Myanmar and Bangladesh in a way. So sometimes the northeast, is just like the south of India is seen as one state at times, all the south of India. And it's I say this in jest, but all 7 states are looked at as one big body out there. So, and again, in Meghalaya, there was no major play in social media or in conventional media. The thing about the voluntary groups, posing another challenge there, is that they are deep, committed, very hardworking, but yet not media savvy, not writing about things, not speaking to the press. So these were people, some of them, one of the gentlemen who comes to mind is Father Sunny of Bagdil, amazing organization. But this gentleman spends like 7-8 days unconnected to network. The networks are extremely poor. Electricity is not there for probably 12 hours, some places a whole day, some places 18 hours. So he's completely unconnected. Even if the mobile phone were to work, he would need power to charge it. So he would be offline for 6 to 7 days, working, finding, people who need help. And the help reaching, I think this is a story that must be told. People in other places are put up in camps, our experience. In Meghalaya, you can't set up the camps deep into the Garo Hills, the North Garo, the West Garo Hills. What you do is take relief to a place, and before sundown, mind you, because, after sundown, it's very difficult. You put them in a place, and people walk up, you announce it through local people, you kind of disseminate information, and people come 6-7 kilometers to pick up that relief, because people had gone back to their villages. Their homes were shattered in these few villages there. They were using local material to rebuild some kind of a shelter. I not call it a house or a home. So they had to come and pick up relief and walk back 6-7 kilometers. Some places were that inaccessible. So the challenges were infrastructure and communication in Meghalaya like I've never seen in all these months anyway. We had to surmount these, and we needed the help of local volunteers and local orgs, which was Bagdil, deep in the hills. Our own coordinator, Alan from Shillong, happens to be a professor, a great motivator and a local person, and voluntary health organization of Meghalaya, working out of, in short, we used to call it VHAM, working out of Shillong, doing the connecting basically with the rest of the world, the people who were in Shillong. So the challenge we faced were infrastructure and communication there, and how to reach out to the people who needed help, even to figure out how many villages or how many numbers of families. See, we couldn't take 50 blankets in a village which had 60 people. The optics are not good. It works up people. Yeah, they're very, very remote places. So if you calculated 100, you had to be sure there were 90 people would do, but you couldn't have 110 people. Right? So these things were the challenges in Meghalaya. That's why it has gone slow. We are still working on Meghalaya right now for children's stationery. And I must tell you, this is of essential and huge importance to the children of Garo Hills. The schools were hit badly. All the supplies, the personal stationery, the school bag, the notebooks were destroyed. We have helped 87 children. We need to help about 1,000 more.
I see.
Get the basic stationery kits because their semester starts somewhere in December.
Right.
They won't be able to attend it without their kits. So we are trying very hard to source, funds and resources for the stationery right now, and lights after that, alternate energy lights for their study. One student, one light is going to be our, pitch for these students. So that's how we are working in Meghalaya as we speak.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So I guess, given the situation, given that you've covered in a very short span of time about 3 major flood relief efforts, and I'm sure you must have worked with at least a few of the government authorities. So is there like any opportunity for you guys to interact with the government authorities and help them better prepare for these kind of disasters for future? Is there like a window of opportunity for you guys to have that kind of a dialogue with them?
We got this input from the government itself, but this is post the J&K because the work we did with the army. We were, there was some sort of a proposal that we help them with information, curated information, in a post-disaster situation. That conversation hasn't moved very far, but they would like us to help them with the way we help the rescue and relief efforts by looking out for the right information and pitching it at the right time, both to government agencies, sending it back to local volunteers or to the people. Anyone who has a phone in the hand which is working could see what is required where or what was happening, and to the voluntary agencies and people across the country who were there to help. So they did suggest that we have a dialogue with them, but that's in very, very early conversations right now.
I see.
So that was on a larger scale. Locally, the help you asked, have we worked? Yes. Even in Northeast, at each place, in fact in Meghalaya, the big source of help is the local administration, the local collector's office, the district collector's office in both places in North and West Garo Hills. Their inputs, in fact, a gentleman from the West Garo Hills, the DC, shared a PPT with us, which we would absolutely even remotely not expect initially, which gave us pictures of photos of disaster hit areas with the names of villages, which we wouldn't have been able to get. As I mentioned, the local voluntary groups did not have communications network, or they were, as strong as others, and they were deep into villages. So the gentleman, Mr. Bakshi, helped us, kickstart this with information coming from his side in the first week itself. So that was a good input. Similarly, in other places, BDOs, that is block development officers in districts, they have helped us a lot with the counting of affected people and the number of people in each family, because these are smaller places, unlike the huge urban metropolis in India. So they know the number of houses, the number of people in each family. So this data, yes, was forthcoming from them even then and even now as we do the stationery and the lights bit. So the local government people have been very helpful and have coordinated with us.
I see. Well, Vijaya, it was great talking to you. And I want to say that we had enough of disasters we don't need anymore. But unfortunately, that's not going to be true. And the only thing we could try and do is to better prepare ourselves. And hopefully, your efforts can lead, in that direction. I say this in the closing remarks that every single person I spoke to on voice on the team, that may your tribe grow. So I wish the same with you, and thank you very much for your time today.
Hey, thanks, Suresh. Thanks, everyone, every one of you listeners who listen with so much care and interest. A couple of things I'd still like to patch you into, Suresh, and one of it is our joke, is a team jest every night. We say, we need to better prepare in case a crisis happens, but God forbid. So we do keep saying that because, crisis planners do not really look forward to a crisis. In fact, they don't. Right. And the second and the last bit is a very critical part, and I'll try to wind up as quickly as I do on this.
No problem.
Is somewhere from J&K to Northeast in those weeks, and I can't probably put a date to it right now, we realized that disasters might happen, and we will not be able to call it J&K and then change the website to a Northeast, and then because last year we did Uttarakhand when we did File-In as well. Some of our team people worked with crisis mappers and humanity in File-In as well. So that is how Voice happened. The volunteers online for impact in crisis and emergencies. We rechristened ourselves, renamed ourselves, and gave the site our identity as incrisisrelief.org. That was the transition that happened between these two disasters from JKFloodrelief.org to InCrisisRelief. So that's how this team is, and thanks for your wishes and prayers and blessings, anything. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Suresh.
All right, thanks. Same here, Vijaya. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Friends, if you liked today's show, please go to youtube.com/NRI Samay and click on the subscribe button. You will get notified every time we publish a new show. And you can also like us on our social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and Google+.